Thanks, Carolyn. Dr. Richard Murray joins us from the Muskingum Valley Educational Service Center, talking about a education plan that has been used, implemented, in place, called evidence-based education. Tell me a little bit about this.
Well, it's basically an evidence-based model, Brian, and what it does is it relies on evidence, data, research, and information to drive programming and spending in public education.
Of course, spending a hot button issue of just, going back 20, 30, 40 years as we've had the cases that have gone through the Supreme Court here in the state. This model, though, measures several outcomes, I guess, to then begin to look at the costs.
Well, the interesting piece about the model, there are a lot of components in it, and actually, if you see the model here, there's a lot of information. What it does is it basically looks at effectiveness in teaching, it looks at effectiveness in programming, and it pays close attention to how dollars are spent in those particular domains. Actually, it does model a little bit of what Finland is doing. Finland is #1 in the world in math and science. And Finland has said that we have to commit to effective teachers, we have to commit to rigorous curriculum and programming, and we need to have political will and political leadership. And the evidence-based model gets at that.
And now, with the implementation of this, there's been some other panels that have been done, or some work that's been done to say, hey, we really want to look at a couple of things.
In 1991, now Supreme Court Justice Robert Cupp led a bipartisan committee of legislators, 10 legislators. And the legislators concluded that we need to look at evidence that drives an objective perspective to what education costs and what education programs need to be about. And here we are 20 years later, we've got this model in place. And actually it's interesting because on the Ohio Department of Education website, they are putting together a benchmark report to look at how tax dollars are spent operationally and how they're spent programmatically all across the state. In a nutshell, superintendents are charged with advocating for boys and girls and advocating for learning. We're also charged with communicating. I think the message from all of the superintendents in Coshocton, Morgan, Muskingum, and Perry County is that the evidence-based model is good for kids. The evidence-based model is good for Southeast Ohio, and it's going to be good for taxpayers because for the first time, we're going to measure where every penny gets spent and the results we get from those pennies.
And you're saying that the data is now just starting to be collected. Obviously, when you get that fresh data, at least one time, you don't have much to be able to plot on the graph to be able to say, hey, this is effective, that isn't. But 10, 15 years down the road, really be able to go back and sort of look at that and say, if we spend this, we can get this.
Exactly. The journey of 1,000 miles begins with the first steps. The evidence-based model went into place last year, and just like every plan, it is not perfect, and there are things that need to be worked out. The School Funding Advisory Council, 28 bipartisan people are meeting on a regular basis to try to fine-tune the plan.
Okay. Changing gears just a little bit, can you kind of bring us up to date? There was the competition that happens nationally, and Ohio was able to compete and win some dollars from the federal government?
Actually, the Race to the Top grant, Ohio was able to, I believe it was $440 million that we received, and one of the components of the competition, they referenced the bold, courageous, bipartisan plan called the evidence-based model.
Okay, so even at the federal level, they're starting to see the value of that, and that's translated into some dollars. I know that was, just about 4 or 5 weeks ago, I think that award was given. So still some other details to work out on that.
Exactly. And most of the schools in Morgan, Coshocton, Muskingum, and Perry County will be the benefactor of that money to help drive. We need to move away from the status quo and get into the 21st century if we're going to be able to compete globally.
All right.
The evidence-based model is going to let us do that.
Well, Dr. Murray, of course, if people have questions, they can contact you at the ESC, or you were saying a lot of this information available on the Ohio Department of Education website?
That's correct. It's on the Ohio Department of Education website, or, as you say, they could contact me at Muskingum Valley Educational Service Center.
All right. Dr. Murray, thanks so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you for the opportunity, Brian.
Sure.
Appreciate it.
All right. We'll be back with more after this. Stay tuned.